Steve Cooper, Rank Success, and this is another in a short series of videos that I've been doing for people who aspire to promotion in the UK Police Service to Sergeant, Inspector and Chief Inspector. And I've called this video Ready, Steady, No. Okay, and the reason for that is because there will be a starting gun fired, if you like, for a promotion selection process. And when that normally happens, as I've alluded to in previous videos, that tends to catch people out. And it catches people out because they've got other things on the horizon, they've got a full workload, they knew potentially that there's a promotion process to be announced. Usually the jungle drums are beating or the rumour mill starts. That's the time really to really start thinking about starting the process. So when I say ready, steady, no, it's because most people are not ready. And getting into that state of readiness, doing something to start, is usually the point at which people either download one of my free videos, look at some of my free YouTube videos, start reading some of my blogs, and you can't help but build up a sense of momentum when that happens. Now, 2021 has been a very good year for Rank Success in terms of people contacting, and I just thought I wanted to share, in line with that ready, steady, no kind of ethos, a tool that I use. Lots of coaches use a wheel. You can call it a coaching wheel if you like, but I'm just going to hold this one up to the screen a minute. And this is what I call, this is the Rank Success coaching wheel. And I use it to start a conversation with individuals, because often when we say ready, steady, no, or ready, steady, go, people don't know where to start. So where do you start? So on that wheel, on the coaching wheel, I've just divided it up into a number of segments, if you like, that help you to point out where you would like to start a supportive or meaningful conversation, or where you can choose to start gathering momentum, building momentum around that wheel, spinning it a few times until you're happy with, or at least can start a conversation around each element or section of that wheel. So people have different needs, there are different processes in place at different times in different forces for different ranks, and it's all mixed up again like a kind of cruel game of musical chairs every year. So having a wheel to start with and to have a discussion is helpful. I find it's helpful to initiate discussions. So one of the sections, I'm just looking at the version I've got just to the left of the camera there. Evidence and examples is part of the wheel, so we can start a conversation around that. Interview, and we'll come back to them in a minute. The interview is another section because people want to focus and prepare on that, or that's the part that's the manifestation of their fears or their worries or their concerns. Confidence, well, that's the same for all of us, isn't it? All you want to do is build confidence. Often that's linked to knowledge. Knowledge and experience equal confidence is a little equation, and generally when I find cops coming for support or looking for support, they've got experience, they've got lots of experiences. It's the knowledge gaps, and the knowledge gaps match to the experience equal confidence. So confidence is a big part of the wheel. Preparation and focus. Preparation is the name of the game. It's every subject, it's every video that I do, it's every blog that I do, is to help you focus on preparing effectively for a promotion selection process, whatever that looks like in your force. The other section of it is the role. So the role is fundamental. I've done a separate video on that, I've done blogs on that, because believe it or not, and it's still current today, even last month, people walk into processes and they come out and say, I was unsuccessful. Steve, could you tell me, what you think the issue is? We'll have a conversation. I'll say very early on, would you tell me what you think, or could you describe what the role is that you were going for, so sergeant or inspector? And that's a big fence. It's like the Grand National. Most people go down at that first fence, and I would say there's little hope for them afterwards, but if you're going into a process and you don't know the role you're going for, and you can't have a meaningful conversation around its functions and dimensions, then arguably don't deserve to get through the process. So these are one of the things I always make sure people are match fit for, and the coaching wheel, if you like, supports a conversation around that, because we can move around the sections on the wheel until we've covered the issues, until people feel a little bit more informed, they've raised their awareness, and with that goes along the confidence. So the role is a really important section of the coaching wheel. Knowledge I've alluded to, so knowledge and confidence are two sections of the wheel, and together with experience, they're all kind of blended. And then the other section is leadership. So having a conversation around leadership at whatever level you're going for, bearing in mind leadership is delivered at every level of the organisation by police staff and by constables, but we're talking here about formal leadership positions of sergeant, inspector, chief inspector. So what are the leadership issues there? What leadership style have you adopted? How will you lead when you are a sergeant or inspector or chief inspector? Having conversations around that. So the wheel's very helpful for that. So I'll just go back to the beginning. I found I've got to the beginning of it again. So and there's nothing wrong with that. We can spin around, we can come back to sections, and that's why it's a supportive conversation tool. What have you got to offer? So when we're talking about evidence and examples, for me, that's very much a starting place for a conversation. We can start wherever you want to, but I will always say, well, what have you got to offer? How have you made your policing experiences, attending critical incidents, managing change, implementing changes to working practices, improving things? What evidence have you got? And people will say, well, I've got lots of experience there. I'll say, well, tell me about it then. And there sometimes is a disjointed story or a sequence of events. So I say, well, could you show it to me? And almost 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, nobody has ever written down their evidence. And for many people, the reason is they're just not ready. So when I say ready, steady, no, they've always thought they want to go for promotion. They may even, they're highly likely to have passed the exam, and this is the next step for them. So I said, well, show me some tangible form of evidence that you've got. So, just written down. What was the incident? What was the date? What did you do? How did you behave? Because that's what we're talking about. So there's a whole conversation around that, and people generally haven't got it. So if you haven't got it, chances are it's just noise in your head. And noise in your head doesn't do anybody any good. And it certainly doesn't help with a meaningful, supportive conversation around preparing for promotion. So having your evidence and understanding your examples and your evidence aligned to the competency framework or the competencies you're going to be assessed for is important. So there's a whole conversation to be had around there. And even if your force doesn't require a promotion application, it is always in my mind's eye and in my experience, and I always encourage officers to write it down anyway, because once you start writing it down, you make it tangible. Once you make it tangible, you can start looking at the structure. Once you start looking at the structure, you can ensure there's a flow. When there's a flow to it, you can start going back and saying, okay, how does that reflect the descriptors? And I can do a whole other video on the descriptors, and I will do, because you need to have that laser focus around how you are aligning to or including the descriptors of the behaviour being assessed against in your evidence, whether that's written or verbal. So as a kind of dry run, if you like, I would encourage every candidate to write down their evidence against the competencies. And when people say, well, I don't know what the question's going to be, Steve, against the competencies, I will say, well, it doesn't matter. Just take the competencies, each 6 of them, and the values, and just treat them as a question on their own. Or just imagine the board have said to you, all your instructions are, give us your best example of the competency, we are emotionally aware. Give us your best example of the competency, we take ownership. So if you write down your evidence against each of those and the 4 values, when you demonstrate the 4 values from the CVF in the workplace, you've got something written down. That's a great place to start on the wheel. And any of you can do that at any time. And there's plenty of free stuff on my sites. As I say, free blogs, free videos. And there's a podcast I've done that's starting to gather momentum. There's a whole season of podcasts. You can listen to it free. So in a way, there's no excuses for not being ready. And when you are ready to go, there's lots of stuff to support you. that's free to get you to the starting point, and then you can choose and make decisions on what else you want to do to supplement and complement your preparation. So including bespoke, downloadable digital toolkits, and a 4-hour promotion masterclass that you can download. And generally that's around getting you supercharging your prep so that you can arrive at a point of confidence to walk into a promotion process and give it your best, which is what it's all about. So I'm just going to whiz through very quickly around the other elements of this circle. Interview, well, there's a whole load of issues that can go with interviews. Whether people even understand what type of interview it is. It's a competency-based interview, by the way, but it could be a strengths-based interview depending which force you're in, and forces are mixing and matching those processes. I've talked about confidence, preparation and focus. The name of the game is preparation and to get you focused. The role, I'll come back to that again very quickly. There is very little point in you going for a sergeant or inspector or chief inspector's post if you can't answer the question when the board asks you, would you please explain your understanding of the role that you're going for? Or how do you think the role of sergeant differs from constable, or the role of chief inspector differs from inspector? Once you know the differences and once you know the role, you can be verbally proactive with it in your interview, and confidently so, and make the links that you can to force plans, to PCC plans, to PEEL reports, areas of improvement, and importantly what you will do as a newly promoted leader. Okay, so that's just a little kind of introduction to ready, steady, know, wheel, and that's the kind of tool that I use to initiate conversations. You don't need any of that. You can kind of hit the ground running straight away with the resources I've just alluded to, and for the rest of 2021, as I've started the year, you can get 20% off any of my products or services by using the code RSGuides20, and that's mentioned in my blogs and my podcasts. So until the next video, take care, stay safe, I'll speak to you soon.